Edge magazine published a new interview with Will Byles last week. And while his adroitness at sticking to talking points means that much of the interview is information we've already got, there's a few choice pieces of new information. First off, when talking about influences in the game, the article writer references ghost stories, which could be an idle comment, but between this, the ESRB synopsis mentioning haunted summer camp, the vengeful spirits in the new episode of Bizarre Yet Bonafide, and Eliza's habit of flitting around mysteriously, it looks like ghosts are going to be playing some notable role in the game's story. It's nice to see that Will Byles' touchstone for the Quarry's fairly stereotypical opening sequence, a couple on the road have a breakdown and get into a bad situation, is not Wrong Turn or Jason Lives, but rather the Rocky Horror Picture Show, with Max and Laura standing in for Brad and Janet. It brings to mind the way we keep being told that the Quarry is lighter and more fun-style horror than the Dark Pictures, which tends to be pretty straight-faced. It's weird that we haven't seen any evidence of that yet, however. There's nothing in the game's prologue that's really different from what you'd see in a Dark Pictures prologue, and everything we've seen from later in the game seems to follow a similar structure. At the start of the game, characters are fun and personable so we can get to know them. Then everything turns scary really fast, and they spend the rest of the game fighting for their lives. We've seen a couple of jokes, sure, but no more than the dry, tension-breaking comments we'd expect to see characters make in any of the games. I wonder if this is an issue where they're trying to market it as being more intensely horrific than it actually is, because they want to ensure that hardcore horror audience actually turns up. We won't know until we see more gameplay, which, at this point, might not be until the game comes out, although I'm still hoping for a last-minute themed trailer like we got for House of Ashes with the Deaths video. The article also once again brings up the straight-line screenplay version of The Quarry, which I'm so desperate to get my hands on. You know what would make a great bonus feature for pre-ordering the game or bundling with the DLC? A PDF of the 90-page movie script version of the story. We want to know your canon kills and ending, writers. Then we get the biggest reveal in the entire article, that unlike Until Dawn and every Dark Pictures game other than Man of Medan, the Quarry is going to have multiple ending locations. So we're not just going to wrap things up with another lodge showdown where the only variable is how many characters make it there alive. That's huge news. Even more intriguing than the multiple grand finales, which occur based on the path the players take, is the tease that there's an ending which bypasses the canonical finales entirely. Wait, does that mean that we might get a people fix the van and just escape without resolving anything ending? That would be amazing. I'm always a big fan of unconventional surprise endings in games. From the famous Far Cry 4 example, all the way to my personal favorite, Metal Saga, which let players decide at the start of the game whether they wanted to go off and become a heroic bounty hunter or just stay home and work as a mechanic, which is a perfectly viable happy ending to the whole story. I don't think we'll get an ending that anticlimactic, like a chance for people to not sabotage the van and everyone goes home an hour into the story, but something that anticlimactic happening later would be a great Easter egg for people to dig out. Unless, of course, you can skip the canonical finale by just screwing up enough and getting everybody killed, which, comparatively speaking, would be a disappointment. The article also features a very strange description of movie mode, where it talks about getting rid of everything that isn't immediately approachable to people who aren't very familiar with video games. But then they go on to talk about the director's chair feature. It sounds like the article is conflating movie mode, which we just watch, with the accessibility features that allow players to turn off basically every gameplay element other than walking around and making decisions. I'm sure that's all that happened here, but it was confusing for a second. There's also a sidebar about the death rewind mechanic and how it's primarily there to let players redo decisions that led to feel like cheap deaths. Still no answer on what the longest possible jump back is. Since we know about the broken ladder, likely causing problems later in the game, we're left to wonder how long after the ladder gets broken that death is. Are we talking minutes of rewinding, or hours? Crucially, a final sidebar goes out of its way to state explicitly that the game will not feature any meta-horror or satire elements, promising that it's just a retro-styled horror game like Fear Street was for movies. So that's a pretty firm statement against all of the hints that the promotional materials have put out about the Matrix and Scream stuff. So, that's the interview. Hey, I bought a magazine for the first time in over a decade. Apparently I'll do crazy things for the Quarry. Now, let's look at a couple of other minor things that have turned up. First, there's some slightly confusing text on the gameplay section of the Quarry's website. We already knew the big news about online, that players won't be able to use the online voting system unless they're all in the same console and generation. So PS5 with PS5, Xbox One with Xbox One, and so forth. The line, "with access to the game," is a little more fuzzy. That suggests that there will be no Friends Pass or anything like it being offered, and only people who bought the full game can take part in the online voting mode, even as a passive decision maker. I'm a little disappointed they won't offer some kind of a demo access to help with that, but I guess the goal is to sell as many copies as possible, and 8 players means 8 games sold. Then we've got 2 Abby TikToks, one that features a few frames of a ghost in the woods, and a longer version of this shot from the trailer. Who is this ghost behind Abby? Is it Eliza again, pulling her woods teleporting nonsense? Or is it someone new? I kind of love the way she just hangs out there at the edge of frame, perfectly visible if Abby would just turn around. Or maybe she wouldn't be? It seems like at the start of this shot, she's looking right at the ghostly figure as she turns. Is this another Max situation where he could hear something but not see Eliza, even though she would have been right in front of him? In any event, the fact that there was nowhere for her to run when she was at the bottom of the stairs leans pretty hard in the direction of ghostly teleportation. There's just been lots of interesting stuff coming out, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do now that all of the bio videos are up. I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, consider checking out our Patreon. You can join heroic patrons like Marissa, Joanne, Eduardo, Brian, and Archer in helping keep the lights on around here. If you'd like to see more, there's nightly streams and plenty of videos to check out. We'll see you back here for the next thing, but until then, au revoir.